there's one test that's always tied to the promises of God. There's one. And we can no longer be upset when we are faced with a test, especially this one after today. And we won't be as long as we know this, that all of God's promises come with a specific test that must be passed. A lot of us, the Lord is just waiting for the appointed time. But the appointed time will never be ahead of our heart. Never going to happen. Because if God gives us everything before our heart changes, we're going to think our heart is good. We're going to think the way we are is good. We're going to think that we don't have to change. We don't have to line up fully with his word because he gave us the blessing anyway. The Lord tested the Israelites for 40 years before they were able to enter the promised land. Not all tests require 40 years, though. See, the duration of time that tests take solely depends on how long it takes for us to pass them. And the length of our testing is our time of preparation. To not just pass the exam, but prove we are spiritually ready to handle all the blessings that are attached to the Lord's promises. The biggest test that we must pass, the one that we're talking about today, the one that is tied to our biggest prayers, is the test of our character in Jesus Christ. See, all trials and tests do not just strengthen our faith alone. That's not all that they do. They also shape our character and our behavior so that we are more like Jesus. See, we must take time to look back at all the different situations. Those situations where we patiently waited on God and endured hardships, testing, but then persevered until the Lord delivered on his promises. See, we all have those moments and times in our life. And although we may be in a season of waiting right now, I want us to reflect on the ones back then. There are three things that we should be able to identify. What we should see is that we have grown in our spirit. So any time that you go through tests, you can go back and you can look and you please believe me, you can see how you were back then and you not like that right now. Our faith and it is another growth aspect because you can't have the same faith that you had way back then that you have right now. Because the faith grew for you to get out of the situation that you was being tested in. And then last, you should be able to see how the character development of Jesus Christ has now entered into your life. Are you the same back then that you are today? Because anybody who's gone through a test and passed can look at those three areas and know that the Spirit has worked inside of them. Becoming less of ourselves so that we become more like Jesus, and that is the final exam to reach the promises of God. But all of that really tests our heart. In today's scriptures, we find Abraham, the father of faith, traveling to a foreign territory led by the direction of the Lord. See, as he followed the Lord's instructions, he ended up settling in the land of Gerar. The king of Gerar at the time was King Abimelech. Now, Abraham was afraid that if the people living there saw his wife, that they would kill him and take her because of her beauty. So Abraham tells his wife that they will tell the people of Gerar that you're my sister, so that they will live and not die. Watch this. As Abraham prophesied, Sarah was taken from him and was given to the king. The king did not know that Sarah was married, but the king finds himself lying in bed with her. And then the Lord visited him in his sleep. The Lord told the king that you're a dead man, for who you are laying with is married. Genesis 20, verse 2 and 3 says, Abraham said about his wife Sarah, she is my sister. So King Abimelech of Gerar had Sarah brought to him. Now watch this. But God came to Abimelech in a dream by night and said to him, You are about to die because of the woman you have taken, for she is a married woman. So I want us to catch this. So Abraham's in this place because he's following the Lord. So he's not where he's not supposed to be. So now look what happens. Everything's a setup. In response to Abraham and Sarah living there, amongst the people of Gerar, the Lord had closed all the wombs of the women. All of them. Now all the women in the area are barren. Now God tells King Abimelech to return Sarah to Abraham, and then Abraham would pray for him so that the king and his people would live and not die. Check this out. We need to know the following information as well if we're going to understand the power of today. See, Abraham was 75 years old when God promised him that he would be the father of many nations. Yet his own wife Sarah was barren and had not produced any children. Now she was barren from before the promise. She was barren at the time of the promise. And where we're at today in Scripture is about 25 years after the promise. She's been barren this whole time. So Sarah's been barren her entire life. Then in her old age, she received a promise from God. And then another 25 years, it still had not come to pass. Yet Abraham had been faithful. He's been obedient. And he continued to serve the Lord even though he had not received the promises of God. His faithfulness to the Lord was not dependent on what he was promised, but his faithfulness to the Lord is what prepared him to receive what he was promised. And now Abraham is face to face with the final exam. A test harder than the wait itself. He had to pray for the people of Gerar for the very thing that he and his wife had been praying for their entire life. For the women to no longer be barren, even though his own wife still was. See, it's situations like these that are the final exam that we all must pass if we expect to receive the promises of God. And that brings us to the only point that we have for today is this: serve others anyhow. See, serving others, even in the middle of our own battle, are the final exams we must pass for our own promises to be released. Helping others in their times of need, despite our circumstances, even if our circumstances are similar or even identical to theirs. See, when we can do that, guess what we have? We have developed a heart that is after God's own heart. You know, the fact that we get refreshed when we refresh others is so that we're strong and that we have enough strength for us to cross over into the promised land ourselves. You got to think about this, because God does not want to bless us and we're all worn out from battle. Can't even enjoy what he pours out. See, he sends those people to us because they need our help. Watch. And the Lord does this because he's given us the spiritual gifts that are needed to be used to unlock their blessings. But our God is so good that when we start imparting life messages into them, it also refreshes us in the process. See, when we pass the test, the people sent to us get their breakthrough. God refreshes us so that we are fully energized to receive ours. But a lot of times, we run from the test.